Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 47. And as always, I shall start us off with a tune. Okay, that was a early recording of Land of Hope and Glory, and I quite like early recordings sometimes. So yeah, Max Ernst, was an early one. Okay, folks, just say hello to our guests. Adam, how are you going this evening, mate? Hang on, he might not be back from getting his drink. Ozzy, how are you going, mate?
Not too bad. My washing machine is going on in the background, so I apologize for any disturbances that may cause. I am a grotty wee student, and that may cause annoyances on occasion. Apart from that, I'm not doing too bad at all. It's been a pretty good week for me in my personal life. So, I've been paying attention to a few wee things. But I don't think we'll get stuck into the topics until I think Atman's back and all that. So,
yeah. Atman, are you back yet, mate? I know Atman was getting himself a drink, so
yeah, probably a pumpkin spice latte or something like that.
Yeah. I was doing my weekly look at the Bias Brainwashing Corporation site just before we started, and it's the usual collection of nonsense that you expect from those people.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I did notice this week was there was a short documentary released. I think it was British Forces TV, which is almost as bad as the BBC these days, strange to say. But they released a little short 10-15 minute documentary on life on board the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth. And of course, the featured person was a black guy, of course.
Mm.
Just of course. Like anything else would have been a surprise.
Yeah. I do find it just very jarring for me personally. I mean, I'm not incredibly fussed about this because everyone I know is watching less and less in a tragic way because but I've noticed that a lot of people I know just don't watch as much British media anymore.
Yeah.
And but like it makes me less bothered about these sort of things in which you see this hugely distortionate view of Britain and things like that, because I just know that for most people they're not being affected by it.
Yeah, I hear more and more people saying I just don't watch TV anymore. Absolutely true.
And like some of the really, a lot of the really good shows like still out there, like about British history, things like that. Like for those who like a show I quite like is The Last Kingdom, which is about when England was fractured into different states.
That's the one that's set like around the time of Alfred the Great, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's set. So it's set during Alfred the Great's reign and shortly afterwards, and So I quite enjoy that one, and that's got obviously it hasn't got any of the sort of the perversions of modern day global homo in it, or at least not so many. And I do
like
quite.
The books.
Yeah, Bernard Cornwell is an excellent author.
Yeah, he's the guy who wrote the Shark books, of course, for anyone who doesn't know. But the Last Kingdom books are good. I watched the TV show up until about series 4, and then it got too feminist for me.
That's the unfortunate bit. Like, it's things like when the women are fighting in battle, which I find a wee bit jarring. But I don't get too fussed about it because, like, at some point in time, you've just got to learn to enjoy things. You got to enjoy things, and so for me, that's one of the things that works. By the way, Mitch, just to fulfill your wishes, curly whirly burglar alarm, burglar alarm. There's a wee tongue twist to that.
Mitch is also saying in the chat that next season they're getting a Black Saint in The Last Kingdom. God alone knows where he's supposed to come from.
I'm trying to think of the sort of saints who'd be around at this time who they could even try to do that with.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe get like a beige one from the Middle East somewhere, but not a black one.
Yeah, there were a few Greek church fathers in Britain at the time and stuff like that, but you're not going to get much else. So,
yeah. No, I totally agree. Adam, are you back yet, mate?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So that's all right, man. No worries. We said that you were going for a drink. Did you have any first topics to bring up now that we're all present?
No, just the cricket stuff, but we were probably going to talk about that anyway. So
yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. Ozzy, did you have? You said you did have a few bits and pieces you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, just a few wee things. I listened to about 2 hours of the COP26 thing, the opening event, because I wasn't really doing that much. I was just doing a bit of university work, and I had it on in the background. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how unbelievably boring it was. And I also got, a lot of the times people say like Joe Biden can't speak, but like a secret confession I had to make was that I've rarely ever listened to Joe Biden's talk. And then he says he does his speech at COP26, and like I genuinely believe the rumors that he shat his pants and that he's like going rotten in the brain, because like the guy was just stammering all over the place, more than I do, and I stammer a lot. So, yeah, but there wasn't
He's gaga. He's absolutely gaga for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, and but I remember like a lot of the things people were saying at COP26 were just really vague platitudes. The only real big thing for me was that Nicola Sturgeon was walking around and shaking everyone's hand like she was like some big cheese, and she made quite a funny tweet like the week before in which she said, "I hate shaking people's hands, in particularly men's. I never want to do it again." And then there's this lovely picture someone took of Nicola, like with a big, broad smile on her face, shaking Joe Biden's hand, like it's the fucking Christmas day. Um, yeah,
Hypocrisy on show.
yeah, I could go on for hours on end though about Nicola Sturgeon. She's my family's arch nemesis. I have no doubt that we will, when we reincarnate, we shall go to war with each other like lion and zebra. But that's another party in of itself. Yeah.
What, was there anything else you wanted to talk about there, Ozzy?
Is there anything else really to mention? Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed that's actually really concerning for me is that, like, I was doing some research into private pensions, and I know this is going to sound really boring, but there is basically, there is going to be the people who are retiring now are basically going to be the last people who can actually pay for themselves through their retirement. Apart from that, basically, because of low interest rates, everyone else is going to be the government's bitch in retirement, unless you like have a good plan sorted out. It's really, really concerning. And so it's effectively, by the government is creating a regime with low interest rates to basically own people in their old age. And you can see this, with them forcing people out of their homes.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up in a minute, but yeah. Fair enough.
And so, yeah, that was something that was quite startling for me. And so for all the young people in the chat, I would advise you to get investing young and as quickly as possible, because I cannot think of anything worse than being basically a government consumer stamped sort of barcoded sort of creature. Sounds nasty as hell.
It doesn't take much either. Just little and often, put something away with some relative consistency and keep doing it.
Yeah.
Younger you do it, the better, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as well. Like there's some good books people can pick up if they want to get into, especially if you want to look at some sort of long-term investments as a pension pot. So, like, there's the Intelligent Investor. There's another one I quite liked called I was talking about it today actually with someone else, called Random Walk Down Wall Street. I can't remember who wrote it. That's
a very famous book.
Yeah.
My general advice to people my age is that, like, if you don't really want to worry about finance too much, like, you get some pension planners who are unbelievably cheap. Like, they'll cost you 0.02% of portfolio maturation and things like that. But like, if you're really, really lazy, like things like the S&P 500, because the governments are going to damn well make sure that the S&P 500 never goes down. So you could, if you stick your money in that, then that's 10% returns on average every year, pretty easily. So that's some general.
Ozzy, there's a question from the chat before we carry on with this. Would Sean Connery have slapped Nicola Sturgeon?
I don't really know anything about Sean Connery's politics.
Yeah. I mean, I think he if he was going to slap her, it wouldn't be because she was his woman. Put it that way. I don't think Sean Connery would have looked at Nicola Sturgeon for 1 millisecond. But anyway,
no, he was a proper player. Yeah, Nicola Sturgeon is well, apparently there's now rumors going about that she actually hasn't slept with her husband in multiple decades, and that they're basically together for political convenience.
Wow.
And at which wouldn't surprise me at all, because her husband is a well-known top shagger, and further to that, there is rumors that she has a girlfriend. So,
yeah, Lady of Shalott in the chat is saying she hasn't. They live separate lives. Wouldn't surprise me.
yeah.
Seems to be a lot of that in politics and so on.
Yeah. Which to Boris Johnson's credit, at least he fucks his wife.
Yeah, or vice versa. Or vice versa. I was just going to say, when you were talking about investments for younger chaps and this kind of stuff, and you two guys might know more about this than I do. I'm seeing the government talking about the cashless society. I'm seeing them talking, well, not them, but many people associated with them talking about negative interest rates as well. Isn't that going to be a bit problematic for people's savings?
Well, so Germany already. So, like, here's the thing: like, the central bank sets interest rates, and they can basically. And so that's not actually what you get. That's not the interest rate you will get. It's what the banks who get money from central bank get when they take loans and get cash disbursements and things like that. A negative interest rate has happened already. There are negative interest rates, particularly in places like Germany. And it's a really weird concept, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. As a general rule, though, if you're trying to make your money for pensions through a savings account, you've been doing it wrong for the past 20 years, let alone now. Unfortunately, these days you do need to invest, and also, like, a good thing about investing is that you can become independently wealthy and you're not dependent on these banks and these sort of things. And like, I think soon enough, the independently wealthy and the dependent will be like the new class boundaries, because of this, just the sort of economy that people are making. So I would sooner be in one of those than the other.
Yeah, I see. Anglo-Nihilists and people in the chat are also talking about buying property. I'm sorry, Adam, you were going to add to that, I think.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've used for several years now. I've used a stocks and shares ISA, and that's served me pretty well. I do find that a lot of my boomer relatives, they'll go, "Oh yeah, I've got an ISA," and they're talking about cash ISAs. And they'll go, "Oh, you don't get any money off of them." It's like, well, move it then, do something else with it. But yeah. I mean, investing is sort of the end game. That is sort of where you need to go. I think a stocks and shares ISA is good for some people, especially to start with.
And what do you two gents think about investing in things like gold and silver these days? I see a lot of people suggesting that because it's safe.
So here's the problem. The problem is that gold is a commodity, and so it will not go up ad infinitum. Gold is great to hold during recessions and during currency doubts and things like that. And like, let's say, for instance, the government collapsed. If you have, I wouldn't say gold, because gold can't really be traded, because it's just, you have to sell a crumb to buy your food for a week. But like, having lots of silver, that's probably like having 6 months worth of silver is probably not the worst idea on earth. But in terms of like a long-term investment strategy to make you money, I would still stick with stocks. But
yeah, I just, it worries me the way the government is, well, not so much the government themselves, because of course they're careful what they say for the most part, but it worries me the way we hear people talking about the cashless society, negative interest rates. You also get the World Economic Forum with its, live in the pod, eat the bugs, and own nothing. They want everything to be rented. It just seems to me that your grip on your money, especially if it's investments and so on, is becoming less and less sure, if that makes any sense. Like, the government can interfere with that stuff much more easily than they used to be able to.
Mm. Nicola Sturgeon's the kind of woman that turns men homosexual. Sorry,
I totally agree, by the way. But yeah.
So yeah, I've got a friend that's actually been big into buying precious metals, and he's kind of convinced me to get some as well. So gold is VAT free. That's a benefit, but silver, you can buy much smaller quantities of it, and it's much easier to pass on. So if you're going to move into that, I think it's a good way of diversifying. If you've got a good savings portfolio and you want like a rainy day fund in case like the actual collapse happens in real time,
yeah,
I think it's a good backup.
Yeah, and like one of the possible things that we may witness soon enough is hyperinflation, because the government, the government literally doubled the money supply during the course of 2020, and we don't know what they've done with the money supply since then, and America is already starting to see rises in the money supply. So buying precious metals is not a terrible idea in those circumstances. Like you get people in Venezuela who had like even like a small wee chest of silver, and like they become millionaires overnight, or comparatively so, because of that's they have the thing that people value. But I wouldn't rely on gold and silver as increasing value in and of itself. If you want to increase the value of your portfolio, you should be investing in stocks.
My precious metal friend in Thing just messaged me actually and said hyperinflation is why I started stacking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this hyperinflation stuff, it's just going to remove people's savings totally if it actually comes about.
Yeah.
Monetary savings, yes.
Yeah. I mean, any money you've got in the bank could become worthless virtually.
Yeah. This is actually something that I kind of agree with the libertarians on, in which they basically say inflation is the secret tax, because it's because a lot of people are like, particularly Keynes published back in the day, like inflation is good because it encourages spending, but like it's just like a clever way of basically taxing your bank account without you noticing they're taxing your bank account. It's pretty pernicious.
What do you chaps think about property as an investment?
It's, as long as mass immigration is still a thing, it's a great idea.
Yeah, like part of the reason I brought it up is to segue into a different topic, but yeah.
Yeah, my one of my friends, his father designs nuclear power stations for a living, so he's fairly wealthy, and he bought him a flat in our hometown. And when they bought it about 8 years ago, I think it was a 1-bedroom flat, really quite small, on the outskirts of town, 220,000, and now I think it's up to over 400,000.
Wow. I saw, who was it? Someone in the chat, Anglo Nile, was saying he bought a property somewhere in the north of England for like 50,000, and it's now worth 80,000. So,
yeah, it's prices can vary so much depending on area. It's pretty shocking, and I get like I know there are some people on the right, especially a bit more of a libertarian lean. They'll say, you lift yourself up by your bootstraps, or something along those lines. A bit more modernistic, I suppose. And the issue with that is I don't think people should be, especially when this issue is largely caused by immigration, is largely caused by an increase in demand in the property market by them literally importing wannabe homeowners. It's not really fair to turn around to people and say they've got to move away from their hometown just because it happens to be in a more expensive area like the South.
Yeah, I mean the other thing, of course, about this is I'm trying to get my thoughts in order here because I was reading something. The other thing about this is that I'm old enough to remember the early 90s when there was actually a bit of a collapse in the property market in England. And a lot of people ended up with like negative equity in their mortgages. And it was quite serious for quite a while. I mean, it picked up again eventually, but it took quite a long time. And it certainly put quite a lot of people into trouble. I heard it, so I remember it.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock in property, because the thing is that property it's hard to predict, and it's not. It's just not quite as you can't predict that it's going to rise in the same way I can predict that next year the S&P will probably be worth about 10% more than it is this year. Sometimes I'm wrong about that, but most of the time I'll be right. I can't say the same for property. It's much more random, as we saw in 2008. So, yeah, do be careful about that. My advice will always be just buy a few stocks, just buy a few like broadsheet ETF stocks, and you'll be fine.
I see Natman Prime in the chat is saying there will be no renting. I actually think that they actually, in some ways, prefer people renting.
Well, yeah, renting is renting's great for long term. Like if you're an upper middle class busybody, renting's great. It's a great business model, and it's also psychologically not very good for you to basically think that someone else, controls where you live and things like that.
Yeah.
So to be honest, like, I mean, I'm a student now, so I get what I get. But like the plan would be that like I would sooner live in the countryside in like a shack that I own than in a palace that I don't. So
yeah, I totally agree. I would totally agree with that. Well, as we're talking about the housing market, that gives me a chance to bring something else up, which I think maybe Adam might have something to say. I was watching the case last week that you partly brought up of the Kent Council that was trying to stop some sort of big housing estate, which of course we only need because of the constant mass immigration. And the Kent Council decided not to do it, and then good old Michael Gove overturned their decision, I believe, Adam.
Yeah, as housing minister, he came in and just overturned it. Yeah, and I mean it's next to impossible. I mean, I know the area quite well.
This was on like kind of Greenbelt place, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just outside of Herne Bay. My uncle used to live not far from there actually, and he yeah, so it was a massive movement against this, a big push, and they basically had to pull out all the stops. It took them a lot of effort to get that plan turned down, because of course councils very rarely decline anything like that nowadays, and and then it didn't matter. They'll just push it through anyway.
Yeah. Democracy, democracy in action.
Yeah,
I mean, I think most of us think that democracy is largely a sham anyway. But I mean, it's and the only reason to do this, because the British birth rates are declining; they're not going up. The only reason they have to keep doing this is because of the mass immigration. It's the only reason.
Yeah, but it's also worth pointing out that the only reason birth rates are largely declining is also because of mass immigration. Because it just pushes up property prices, and property prices are one of the single biggest effectors that you can easily measure that affect birth rates.
It puts people off getting married. It puts people off having more kids.
Yeah, because the thing is, first off, if you take two equally aged groups, the homeowning group see an increase in their birth rates from property prices going up, but it's still lower than the increase in birth rates amongst the renting population when property prices go down. So then when you add on to the fact that the property owning population in this country is massively older than the renting population, like enormously so on average, it's you're compounding the effect to such a degree that it's a pretty enormous change. And of course the thing is, they brought in all this, they brought up all this crap. They used to say, well, we need immigration because of declining birth rates, but at the time that Tony Blair did the whole opening the doors thing, the birth rates were fine. It was only in the sort of preceding 5 years that they started to really decline again.
The other thing that discourages people from having kids that's not mentioned is actually, which is also worsened, exacerbated rather, by immigration, is schools. Most people generally want to have kids when they know that the schools are stable. They can get a kid to place at a nice one. Everyone in the class will be speaking the same language, and that doesn't really happen particularly in most urban areas anymore. And so you'll probably, most of these people will put it off until they can, quote, live in a good area and get into good schools, which generally means homogenous areas.
And then it's almost impossible for an average couple for not for both of them not to work if they're going to have a mortgage and so on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole thing is it's like it's all rolled together.
Yeah, and particularly in the southeast, in which I have a few friends who live there. That's where like a lot of the grammar schools are, and you basically end up going into price wars in those housing areas because everyone wants a house there, so they can send their kids to those schools.
Yeah, and also, of course, you've got to be within reach of your work if you haven't got a job that you can do remotely.
Yeah, it's bonkers. It's absolute bonkers.
Well, my grandmother owns a house that's a 5-minute walk away from school, and it's not even a particularly amazing school. It's kind of average, and the even though it's just a sort of 2 up, 2 down, not a particularly big place at all, and the parking's dreadful, and the house is sort of valued at about 480,000.
Adam, what did you think of the statements coming out of the government last week about old people should leave homes that are too big for them? What did you think of that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, they've been saying that for years, haven't they? I mean, it's largely just cope. I mean, they did particularly say this about 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact context around it, but it was before they brought in the bedroom tax. It was sort of around the same time. And they're basically saying, well, there's too many people living in homes that are too big for them. And I'm not entirely sure I particularly believe that. I think the amount of people that are living in homes too big for them is a very tiny minority. That's just the government scraping the bottom of the barrel, that is.
I mean, the thing is, then first of all, they're certainly not going to affect the so-called elites, in inverted commas. And it's certainly not going to affect all these Arabian princes who own homes in London that they've virtually never used, this kind of stuff. There's no talk from the government of doing anything about that stuff.
Yeah. So
presumably a lot of those older people who are living in homes with only 1 or 2 people in them are looking to pass those homes onto their children eventually,
Yeah. Yeah, so Niall just said in the chat, British underclass and the working class still have 2 kids. There's a fertility by local authority checker, and mine is still around 2. Birth rates in the UK are 70% white, 59% white British. I'll have to check that local authority one later. But yeah, one of the things you'll notice is that there's like a few people having still a good amount of kids, and then there are other couples that just have no kids. You know, like I mean, I know quite a few people who, I mean, actually, if I look at everyone who I went to school with, they're either already on about 2 to 3 kids, or they just haven't settled down and have kids yet. And you kind of think, well, you know, maybe they're just going to keep putting it off, and it'll just be too late for them.
Well, certainly a lot of women do that because they prioritize their career, and by the time they decide they're going to have kids, and I have to say, my ex-wife was guilty of this. They're already in their early 30s. So,
yeah, I mean, it's quite noticeable because, like, people I know of, more, working class stock and things like that. I noticed that they're like, my parents didn't have me until they were 36, and my elder sibling until when they were 34. And I noticed that a lot of people in sort of the, working class, I want to try and be dignified about this and not sound classist and ridiculous, they'll normally have children at more sensible ages, particularly like, mid and even early 20s, which I personally think is the right age to have them.
I still think what you tend to get is that even with working class families, yes, you get a lot of working class families who will have 2 or sometimes 3 kids. But the only people I see who have lots of kids these days who are actually white British are like unmarried mothers who generally have them from several fathers.
There's some of that, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I think probably my anecdotal experience probably corroborates that a bit, because like the big white families I've noticed personally have normally been at church, and even then they're Greeks and things like that.
Yeah.
And normally these will be from very religiously devout people. There's a girl at my church who she actually takes offense if you offer to wash up at her house and things like that. She's like, I'm not an invalid and things like that.
She's a trad lady.
Yeah. But these are like from traditional Eastern European countries. I would fall over if I heard a Western woman say that. And I'm not saying Western women should only like clean dishes and things like that. That's not my opinion at all. But
it's one of the things they could do, though.
I don't know. I find that the right wing position that women should be barefoot pregnant and we shouldn't like teach them anything to be a bit sort of childish.
That's not my position, to be fair. And like,
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it is.
Whenever I've been married or in a long-term relationship, we've had a dishwasher, for God's sake. So all she's doing is putting the dishes in a dishwasher. Yeah, it's not that difficult. So, yeah. And I did that sometimes too, to be fair.
And it's like women, maybe women should be educated and all that. But like, one of my things I've been wondering is that like if women ever peak, I don't want to say breeding age, but fertility, in their 20s or early 20s or so, why don't women, have their kids first, and then like after they've gone through the infancy period, then go to university and enter the job market? Seems like a bit more sensible than what currently happens. But
it would make more sense. So, Adam, what's your opinion on this stuff? You're a young chap.
I'm a bit more modernist when it comes to that sort of thing. I don't want no ditzy wife. I want someone I can come home and have a proper conversation with.
Yeah.
Although I will say that I did happen to, whilst being a bit drunk, say in front of my ex-girlfriend, well now ex-girlfriend, and her friends, said that I'd keep her barefoot and pregnant, and she said that she actually quite liked it later on.
Yeah, you'll find some women like that for sure. I mean, I think that there isn't necessarily a dichotomy between intelligent women and traditional women. There's no reason why a woman can't be intelligent but also feminine. No reason at all, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my father came from a family with 7 children.
Yeah.
I came from a family with 2, which I think is pretty general for if you look at that sort of generation. Given that my father was born in 1933, and he was I can't remember if he was the second or the third child, but he was the oldest son. And then I was born in 1965, and I think if you looked at British families and British working class families, respectable working class families, I might say, that was pretty much how they all went, really.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I think these days, I think probably 2 or 3 kids is reasonable, because migration or no migration, Britain's overcrowded, and I don't want to exacerbate the situation by getting into breeding wars. So like 2 or 3 kids is fine, to be honest. And like you only need 2 kids really to keep stability generation wise. So I'm not really.
I'll point out that lots of surveys that have been done on this find that most European men and women sort of float around the sort of wanting 2 to 3 kids anyway.
Yeah.
And if they have slightly less, it's usually due to some sort of other factor.
Time constraints or things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I really hammer on the housing issue, because I think the housing one's a big one that's also a giant vote winner too.
I think there's 2 things. I mean, obviously contraception has played a huge part in this, like in the reduction in family size. You can't underestimate how much contraception has played a part. But also, when you're looking at people like my grandfather's generation, and my grandfather was born in 1908, he was still coming from the background where people had lots of kids because you tended to lose quite a number of them when they were small. He didn't because the medicine had advanced quite a bit by the 1930s, but and also he was lucky to some degree. But if you look at people in the 19th century, and that was the tradition he was still coming from, given he was born in 1908, people had big families because they tended to lose up to 50% of them sometimes.
Well, this is one of the other things. I often think that when people look at like a raw birth rate number over the ages, I think they're kind of looking at it wrong. I think you need to look at it as a ratio of birth rates to child mortality, because and when you look at it that way, there's a few standout things that are quite shocking. Like if you look at it that way, suddenly the birth rates in the 1920s look horrendous compared to even to today. Because birth rates in 1920s in the UK were comparable to what they are for white British now, except that obviously there was a lot of kids didn't make it. I think in, let's say, North America, which was particularly rough, even as late as 1950, half of all kids didn't reach the age of 15.
Yeah, and there were also a lot of dead potential dads in the 1920s in Britain. To be fair, from World War One.
Yeah.
Someone says in the chat, "Don't forget abortions." Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and the fact that that's got nothing to do with a man. You can be married to a woman, and if she decides to have an abortion, there is absolutely nothing you could do about it as the husband.
There's a because you streamed with John. Was it yesterday?
Yes.
There's a stat he brings up. I can't remember what it is. That abortions are like a ratio of live births in the UK. I can't remember what the stat is now. But
I think it's pretty high. Yeah, it's pretty high.
Yeah. Lady of Charlotte saying the pressure women are under to pursue a career over motherhood is huge. And like, I mean, for me personally, like, I've known a lot of sort of people like middle-aged women who've sort of heard about girls my age who are, wanting to settle down and all that. And there's like a load of spite about it. It's like there's quite a lot of there's a lot of spite towards women who want to just, have kids. Like they're just some sort of evil, like neglectful, idiotic creatures. It's a very disheartening thing to see. And it's like having children is something that's to be ashamed of. I don't understand that. I can't understand it for me. But yeah, it's a truly it's a tragic state of affairs actually for women, because it on contradiction to feminists basically saying you can do whatever you want. It seems that a lot of these things are being castigated.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in like male-dominated work environments, and even then, I've seen two examples of this. I remember there was a guy; he was a young lad, so it was out of marriage, sadly, but it still ended for the best. He got his sort of girlfriend pregnant, and they had kids, and then they had one, and then they had a son later on as well. And he got quite a lot of shit from that, for people going, "Oh, you're making a mistake. What you're doing, blah blah blah," and which was rather unfair. And then more recently as well, my boss, who is a fucking mess of a man. I mean, this is a guy that said that we needed Tony Blair back because he would sort this shit out. He actually was doing a telephone interview with someone while I was in the office, and he said afterwards to the other person who was working from home, who was in on the conference call too, "Oh yeah, I'm not sure about that guy. He's got too many kids. I don't want him taking time off every time he needs to go and do something." And I just thought that was actually pretty fucking disgusting. I chewed him out over it, but yeah,
this is the same one who doesn't dress up smartly for work.
Oh yeah. He's a fucking mess. He wears shorts with pink flamingos on them, and boasts about how good at golf he is.
Wow. One of the things I agree with Winston Churchill on, and there are not many, is that golf is a good walk spoilt. But Aussie as a Scotsman may not agree with that, because it's a Scottish game.
Well, I'm actually none of my Scottish side were very big into golf. The actual big people are my mother's side. My mother is from Northumbria, and my grandfather is God bless him, he died last year. He was a phenomenal golfer. He reached a handicap of 4, I think, during his peak. Yeah, I don't think he would have seen it exactly as like the he didn't boast about it. Like you shouldn't be boastful about these things. Like Aham's bosses, but yeah, hey ho.
I had a mate in South Africa, Dave, and he was a gunner on an Eland armored car, which is like a French armored car that South Africans used to use. And he actually spent most of his time in the army playing golf because he was very good at golf. And so eventually officers got him to basically just play golf with them all the time. It was absolutely crazy. It was really quite amusing. How to spend your time in the army playing golf, really. Absolutely crazy. But yeah, he apparently was quite a good gunner on an Eland armored car as well. So it was a bit of a waste that he ended up just being a golf player. But anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to stiff at golf players because I don't really know much about the sport. I was invited by a friend once to do golf, and I'm dyspraxic, so it was a dastardly state of affairs. So I'm not going to claim lordship over golf players or something like that.
I got a question in the chat here from Anglo Nile. Did you have much experience in the way of apartheid? Any thoughts? I moved to South Africa in 1985, and by that time, most of the petty apartheid, separate toilets and all this kind of nonsense, had gone already. Most of that was gone by the middle of the 1980s. So, no, I didn't, to be honest. And the only violence I saw in South Africa under the white government was a couple of white blokes having a fight outside a shopping centre in Pietermaritzburg. That's not to say there wasn't violence going on. There was, but it was like in rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal, of Zululand and this kind of stuff. And it was things like the ANC burning down schools, because the ANC had this crazy policy of no education without liberation, is what they called it, I think. And what it resulted in was that there was a whole generation of rural black kids who basically couldn't read and write and were therefore unemployable. So, that did them huge favors, of course. Not. So no, I listen. South Africa was a nice country. It is still just about the most advanced country in Africa because of its history and the fact that it was actually run by white people for longer than anywhere else. And it's been completely fucked up. Excuse my French. It just has. 4 of my friends, at least 4 that I know of, have died since I left in 2000. Sorry, when I say died, I mean being killed, murdered since I left.
Yeah, I crunched the numbers on the murder rate thing a while ago, and I mean the data they've got is quite crude, so it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah,
and
even if you,
but I think when I did it, it came out that like white people in rural communities had a murder rate, had a chance of being murdered 4.8 times higher than, I think that's what it was, 4.8 times higher than the sort of average in South Africa, which is already going to be skewed by those rural rates anyway. It's quite shocking when you think that usually it's reversed. It's in urban areas that the murder rates are higher. But yeah,
isolated people on farms. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
you're isolated on a farm, and if you don't have your firearm on you or you can't get to it, they won't just murder you; they'll torture you, and that goes for women and children as well. And I've seen lefties try and say that's not true. Sorry, there's so much evidence that it is true. And there's also lots of evidence that there are quite a lot of South African cops who are involved in this as well, because the corruption over there is so crazy. And I mean South African black cops, of course.
It's kind of funny how on the teat of the system, most lefties, even the ones that claim to be anarchistic or dissident, are. They kind of they seem to think that the authorities are sort of hiding up murders of minorities when you literally can't keep them out of the press for love nor money.
Yeah.
And similarly, when this sort of stuff is covered up elsewhere, they just sort of accept the cover up and play along.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The murder rate amongst South African blacks is through the roof as well. I mean, like killing each other, that's through the roof as well, as is the rate of rape and all this kind of stuff. And that's got worse as well since the ANC took over. I mean, I had a Zulu maid who actually said to me she wished, this was in about 94, no, it's probably later than that, it's probably 95, 96. She said she wanted the white government back because things were so bad.
Mm.
And this was a Zulu maid, not educated at all. Like, I doubt she could write.
Yeah, I mean the Zulus don't get on with the Bantu, do they? So it's
they don't get on with the Xhosa, who are the bigger people there. Yeah, I mean the Zulus are Bantu. All of the South African black guys are Bantu, except for the Khoisan.
Right, okay. Right.
But they don't get on with the Xhosa, and there's like, I don't know. I think there's something like 18 different black groups in South Africa, and none of them like each other very much.
Mm.
Well, yeah, it's one of the interesting little tidbits that people don't tell you about in the history of South Africa is just before the Dutch arrived, the Bantu were basically in the midst of completing a racial extermination. And we know it's an extermination because you can find in children Khoisan DNA, which is basically an indicator of rape and conquest, because women rarely willingly do that sort of thing, and so when people say you're treating the natives badly, what you're actually saying is South Africa is basically two dominant ethnic outsiders fighting over the scraps, and it just turns out that the Dutch and then the British won out because, well, not going to answer the reason for that. So yeah,
skill and courage.
Yeah, it's a bit more fundamental than that. Or
skill, courage, and technology.
It's still a bit more fundamental than that. I'm not gonna say any more than that.
Well, I suppose it's intelligence as well, but
I didn't say that. I did.
No, listen. As I said, South Africa used to be a bloody nice country. It used to be quite safe for everybody, relatively speaking, and it isn't anymore. And people there all people, I'm talking about the black people as well, are all getting poorer.
Mm. Yeah, Niall earlier said, I prefer Rhodesia to South Africa. I think Smith managed Rhodesia better than most South African prime ministers did. Afrikaner ones for sure.
Of course,
I think the apartheid only increased in resentment.
Well, South Africa was run by Dutch people. What do you expect?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the Afrikaners are not totally Dutch. They're Dutch. They're Huguenot French and also a certain amount of Germans as well. So that's really Afrikaans people. A lot of Huguenot French in the Afrikaans, who went there after they were chucked out of France, of course. I don't know. I've got Afrikaner friends. I've got good Afrikaner friends. And did I totally agree with the Afrikaans government? No. But what I certainly, someone's echoing. I don't know who, guys. What I do agree with is that de Klerk gave away too much too quickly. He was in a much stronger position at that stage, and he could have done things slightly differently. I mean, for example, what they really should have done was concentrated the white people in South Africa in a certain area and said, okay, guys, we're going to take this area, you can have the rest of it. But why that didn't happen is people weren't willing to give up their property all over the place.
Yeah, you said earlier about in South Africa, schools, or about some people in certain non-white communities struggling with reading and writing and the rest of it. But they had a similar issue, I think, in Rhodesia. They had issues where certain tribes were burning down the schools that Smith's government were putting up, and yeah, like quite a while before it really kicked off, and you know that was and then of course they're complaining because they can't pass the very lax tests for voting rights.
Yeah, I mean, Anglo Nile staying in the chat. Germans around Namibia. There's still a few now living good lives. Namibia still has damn good beer too. I actually fought in Southwest Africa, as it then was, in the world's last colonial war, I think. So there we go. We won all the battles and didn't win the war.
That's normally how it goes, though, in these sort of insurgency sort of wars. Because you're fighting against an enemy that's, you know, basically eternal, perennial in nature.
I think the real truth of it, Ozzy, is that the Soviet Union fell in 1989. And at that stage, the Americans and Brits removed their support for South Africa because the Soviet Union had fell. You know, when the Soviet Union was still a thing and when Castro had Cuban troops in Angola, the Americans and the Brits were at least covertly supporting the South Africans. But as soon as the Soviet Union fell, that support was removed. Adam, is that the border war? Yes, it was the border war.
I mean, that also just seems to be every war since 1950.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just find it sad, to be honest. And of course, what we now have is the Chinese are taking over South Africa. So, you know, the ANC are an enormous debt to China at the moment. So, and I somehow don't think that the Chinese are going to be the relatively nice overlords that either the Dutch or the British were. But there we go.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's one of the other sort of disgusting things that you see now is people really put like Nelson Mandela, for example, up on a massive pedestal. And I just think like he embraced Fidel Castro and called him, what did he say? He was a friend to the African people or something. While Castro's troops were putting down a rebellion in Ethiopia for a Soviet puppet dictator.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, Nelson Mandela was jailed for organizing a bombing campaign that mostly killed black people. And he admitted he did it. You know, he never said, no, I didn't organize those bombs, because he did. He was a bloody terrorist. How he became this saint later on, I've never quite worked out. I mean, admittedly,
he wasn't the guy that brought in the Rainbow State.
Yeah, he wasn't as bad as his filth of a wife. But I mean, you know, Winnie Mandela, who had little children murdered, black children, I might add. But anyway, look up Stompy McKenzie if anyone wants to.
Yeah.
But
he's the one that was going to lead us to John Lennon's Imagine or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's worked out really well now, hasn't it?
I have noticed there's a lot of people that will now like look at pictures of South Africa and say, what the fuck happened? Like people that would never pay any mind to that at all. Or wouldn't talk about it whatsoever.
I mean, I watch a number of South African YouTube channels like Conscious Caracal, etc. It's a good channel if you want to follow them. And they constantly talk about the blackouts that they have every week because they can't keep the power grids going. People talk about the enormous holes in the roads all over the place because they can't keep the roads in good condition. We recently saw the mass looting and all the rest of it, because an extremely corrupt South African politician was actually charged for something. You know, it's just the whole thing is it's clown world, even worse than the one we live in the West in some ways.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. There's I mean, I quite like my long distance cycling, right? I kind of like the whole adventure of it. And there's this guy, I read one of his books. He's a Scotsman called Mark Beaumont. And people probably remember he did the whole round the world in 80 days on a bicycle thing. And he also did Cairo to Cape Town, and he wrote a book on it. And it was sort of some light reading. And in that you kind of like read this sort of like mini red pill journey as he's going through these African countries. And like he goes through Ethiopia, and he goes from like Kenya to Ethiopia, and he's saying like, you know, we send all this aid to Ethiopia, and it's this relentless shithole where you have to be warned because the kids throw rocks at you as you go through town.
Well, when I'd been in Australia for a couple of years, like I moved to Australia in 2000, and because I'd met an Aussie girl in South Africa in Durban, and when we'd been here about a year or so, we sold up in New South Wales, and we did 18,000, 20,000 kilometers through the outback and then across the top end. And like my woman, who was she was a nurse with a master's degree, and she was your typical, I suppose you'd call her an Australian white liberal girl, you know. And she had a very high opinion of Aboriginal people and all the rest of it. And as we were doing this long outback trip, we went to lots of isolated Aboriginal communities, and we saw the women with black eyes and all the rest of it, which was like there's a huge amount of family violence in Aboriginal communities, which is a traditional thing with them. They've always done that. They did it long before the white guys ever arrived. And by the time we'd done this trip, we spent 6 months doing this trip. We didn't do it real quick. And we ended up on Thursday Island, which is in Torres Strait, right up under New Guinea. And by the time we'd done a lot of this trip, her opinion on the Aboriginals had gone down very considerably, I have to say, just because she'd seen it, you know. And don't get me wrong, we met nice and good Aboriginal people. I've still got Aboriginal paintings that were given to me by Aboriginal people, or I bought more often. But actually, they were given to me, and then I gave them some money anyway. But yeah, the reality of seeing this stuff is different from what your normal liberal person thinks when they haven't seen it. And I think this is half the problem in Western nations as well as in the third world or in like remote communities in Australia, is that people don't see it. And so they don't believe it. You know, I mean, I'd love to get a lot of these liberal idiots in posh parts of London to go and spend like a month in the African bush somewhere, or even in an Aboriginal remote community. I suspect they would come out with a very different idea of what was really going on.
Yeah.
But, you know, all right, there's a segue into another topic. And you can't get much more English than cricket, can you? What's happening with Yorkshire cricket?
So I'm not sure the specifics of the story. That there was this guy, South Asian, we'll say.
When we say South Asian, gents, we're talking Pakistani or Indian, by the way.
He was Pakistani, I believe.
Yes, he
was. Yeah, but the thing is, this happened a while ago, didn't it? It's not a new story. It's just he's only complained about it now.
Yeah, and there have now been several resignations from the Yorkshire Cricket Board, I believe. And what it seems to me is that they are using race to push real English and real Yorkshire people out of the Yorkshire Cricket Board. Basically, I can't put it any other way. That's basically what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So he's claiming that a guy in the changing rooms referred to him as a Pakistani. A bit more than that, you know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
And he's now left, but he's now bringing this up. Do we actually know when this happened?
I'm not sure. Do you know, Ozzy?
I don't know. I'm going to have to apologize, gents, because my connection's giving me complete haywire. I think I'm probably going to have to log off and call it a day.
You're fine at the moment, but if you want to, by all means.
Yeah. I don't know when it's next going to go. Because I've done this about 4 or 5 times now. So I'm really sorry about this, but
No,
hopefully
it's all right. No worries.
Right,
Thanks for coming on. No,
right.
no worries.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so Sonny Jim said he complained about it in 2017, and the story seems to be largely because they do seem to be saying, oh, it was mishandled at the time, and that's why it's all kicking off now. I find it a bit weird because this is the year that they tried to push the 100 Cricket League.
Yeah.
Which was and that was really pushed as like the whole multi-culti thing. You know, it's going to have equal men's and women's teams. They're going to be given equal footing. They're trying to get a new, young, diverse audience in, and there was quite a lot of pushback from this from cricket fans, and I don't think it done too badly. I did notice there was a bit of cope by the organisers. Like there was a bit where they said,
so are they mixed teams,
yes, no, not on the same pitch at the same time, but playing in the league sort of side by side, but not opposing.
Fair enough. I mean, I've never watched women's cricket. It's never interested me at all.
Yeah, and so there was a couple of copes that I saw from them where they were saying, first off, they said the women's viewing figures were as high as the men's, which could just mean that the figures are down massively. They also said that they wouldn't say how many tickets they sold. They said that they'd sold a good amount of tickets, and they said 55% of them were people that had never been before, which to me kind of seems like the actual fans, the actual ticket buyers just weren't showing up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm so old-fashioned that I watched a clip of. I have stopped watching cricket, and I used to be a cricket fanatic. My woman, my Australian woman, used to send me emails from work saying, "I will go home and prepare the cricket worshipping ground when the Ashes match was on." In other words, she'd get some beers and snacks ready, But I've stopped watching it. Don't watch cricket. Don't watch rugby union. Don't watch any of it. It's all become too political and nonsense now, and it's bread and circuses basically. But I was shocked because I watched a little clip of cricket the other day that the players now have numbers on their backs. For God's sake!
Yeah, I mean,
I'm pretty sure this wasn't even a one-day game. This was like a test match, and they had numbers.
Yeah. Dave Bergeron said they do fake sales of donation buys on tickets. No one will show up, but they are sold out. You see this a lot with the Olympics as well. They do that a lot there. But that's definitely something they do.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
And so the year they've tried to push that, and it hasn't quite got the acceptance they probably wanted. And suddenly there's this huge racism row in cricket. There's just that apparently is years old, but has only just come out of the woodwork now. And it happens to be in one of the big clubs that was supposed to be a part of this new league that I don't think the fans of that club were particularly very happy about. And all the articles on this, it's like, oh, the embarrassment of this, or oh, the shame of that. It's like trying to browbeat the cricket community into submission.
Sorry, I'm just looking something up, Adam. I'll be with you in one tick. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I was just going to wonder what the great Yorkshire cricketer Fred Truman would have said about this.
Yeah,
because he was a guy who always called a spade a shovel, and, a great fast bowler. I just wish the likes of that guy was still around because I just think he would have given this very short shift. I mean, Yorkshire cricket should be for Yorkshire people.
Yeah, it should. So Niall asked, wonder if you can ask the panel what they think about the loss of the original meaning.
Yeah, I was just going to put that up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
There you go. What do you reckon, Alan?
Yeah, it's I saw Lewis is down near, which is down near Eastbourne. I don't know if I'm saying that right. They've done theirs, as he says, in Sussex. They do lots of great shows like that down there. Lots of great all sorts of events during the year. It's actually quite a cool little place. I saw some people getting angry about that, but on the various social media sites. But it's. I mean, they have the whole shebang down there. They have like proper burning effigies, the lot. I think they
Yeah.
even have like burning crosses and stuff like that.
Well,
And you know they really push the whole sort of Protestant supremacy angle, which everyone else seems to have completely dropped and forgotten. A lot of people just see it as a time to go and see fireworks now.
well, where I live in Australia, we got a scattering of fireworks on November the 5th, but only a scattering. But I was watching this Trans-Tasman stream, which is a bloke from Australia and a bloke from New Zealand. And the New Zealand guy, while he was doing his stream, there was constant fireworks going off. So that was quite interesting.
Ooh.
So it's still a big deal in New Zealand.
Yeah.
They still do it in Australia, but it's not as a big a deal. I mean, I don't know about England because I haven't been in England in November for quite some time. So,
well, I mean, we've had about 4 days of continuous fireworks going off in the evening. So people are doing them, and you know you haven't got to go far, especially on this particular weekend, to find a fireworks show somewhere. I mean, even the very tiny, very very small village that I grew up in, that's really just a hamlet. Even they used to have a fireworks display on the field.
can
And
you
used to
still buy
draw
your
people
own,
around.
Adam? Can you still buy your own fireworks?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Because that's what I did. I mean, like from the time my boy was like 2, I always had a backyard firework display with rockets and all this kind of shit. It's just because I'd done it from when I was a kid, you know. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't know what it's really about these days, probably.
No, not at all. But it's one of those things where I often, like when I used to say that, oh, you know, we need to like take back the institutions, and people would sometimes, not necessarily wrongly, they'd get a bit sneery about the idea, and they would say, oh, you know, we haven't got the time to do this slow march that they did. The truth is, you don't actually need that long because the cultural underpinnings are still there. They've withered a lot, but it really wouldn't take much to sort of reinvigorate people about what Bonfire Night or Christmas or any of those things are really about at their heart.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, hopefully not Christmas so much, but certainly Bonfire Night for sure.
I always thought Christmas must seem really weird down there in Australia.
I've lived in the Southern Hemisphere mostly for many, many years, and I still haven't got used to having Christmas at the height of the summer.
Do you have proper Christmas pudding?
Sometimes, yeah.
Isn't it a bit hot for that?
No, it's okay. We got air conditioning, you know.
Yeah.
And also you can like do outside stuff as well. I mean, admittedly, I've had like lobster for Christmas before now, just because I didn't want turkey that year.
Yeah.
But when I've been with a woman, quite often we've had the whole turkey trimming stuff, you know, because they tend to still do that. Like, I mean, I'm not a bad cook, but I don't like cooking, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I can do good curries, I can do all sorts of quite good cooking. I can certainly cook good roasts, but I don't really enjoy doing it. So if it's just me, I don't bother much because I just can't be asked. But yeah. John McNamara in the chat is saying, friend of the show Tristan was in the Sun newspaper. They interviewed him about his pie. Yes, they did, and he's actually in my Discord. Is Tristan? He just returned after not being in it for a while. So
yeah, I'll be honest, because I was in a few for a long time. I was in a few Irish, sort of British loyalist like Facebook groups, right? On my sort of very public sort of profile, you know, the actual me. And They're always quite worried in there about how the demographic trends and sort of what the kids are being brought up with in school and that is going to affect like the outlook of people wanting to go back to sort of a more unionist uniting with the rest of Ireland. But I think Niall specifically posted up a graph about this very story, connected to this very story about that, and it was actually quite white pilling. It was like, I think it was 58% of Northern Irish people want to remain as part of the UK, which was pretty cool. It was only about 30% that wanted to unite with the rest of Ireland.
Yeah, I think the Ulster loyalists are still a big deal for sure. Even though they got sold out by Tony Blair to a large degree.
Yeah,
Tony Blair just did so many bad things.
Yeah, I was rereading Abolition of Britain about a month ago or so, Peter Hitchens' book, and I think he covers in that quite early on. Actually, he says like it's a very, very one-sided, very, very one-sided deal that they can basically just hold out and just do a referendum whenever they know they've got the numbers.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, in addition to that, Adam, and the provisional IRA terrorists, some of whom were extremely vicious bastards, quite frankly, and almost all Marxists, by the way, were basically let go and let off. Whereas until very recently, and I mean last year, we still had British soldiers being prosecuted for shit that happened in 1975.
Yeah.
So there you go. And speaking of the devil, there's Tristan. Good evening, sir.
I mean, the thing is as well is that it's like that you couldn't mess with the whole agreement because of how hardline like regular Irish people would be on it. But the regular Irish people are currently in the process of getting cucked by their own government the same way the rest of Europe has. So maybe that will change. Maybe there's opportunity if you've got a proper half decent, let's say right wing government in. I'm not going to say conservative just in case.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and of course Sinn Féin are fully on board with this, like import, Brits out. Every third world shithole in. They're entirely in favour of that, which is like ironic to me.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, even though they're kind of late to this game, looking at how quickly they're changing it, they might get there even about the same time we do, which is quite shocking considering how much of a head start we had on the whole POSIT thing compared to them. Yep,
absolutely right. Which was the party, Adam, which was just talking? I know I put something up about it in the Discord a week or so ago. Was saying there should be a 20-year break in mass immigration into UK.
Oh shit! I can't remember.
There's someone in the Discord who actually belongs to that party because they said that's my party.
Oh yeah, I think that was in the Duke's End Discord, wasn't it? It's
actually it was.
Is it the SDP?
Yeah, SDP. John Best in the chat saying it's the SDP, and so is Dave. So yeah, SDP by all accounts.
Right. Oh yeah.
Tristan, you can come on now if you want to, mate. We'll probably go for another, I don't know, half an hour or so. If you want to come on, Tristan, you can come on now, mate. Just say in the chat, and I'll send you the link.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole freeze on immigration. I mean, Jesus Christ, that would be one hell of a good start. I know when the Common Sense group came out and they had their little manifesto from within the Tory, made up of some of those backbenchers, some of the based backbenchers, and they looked like the last couple of based backbenchers left. And they had, and one of their claims was to reduce immigration to a set number. And a lot of people were saying, Jesus, that's still really high. And it just kind of really, really put the boot in at just how low our standards are now, because we just accept anything. just anything. Just please, just slow it down, even just a little.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a 20-year break would be great because I don't think there's any way it would start up again after that 20 years, for one thing. I think once you stopped it, you wouldn't be able to start it again very easily at all. So yeah, Tristan, if you're listening in the chat, I've sent you the link. It's in a DM in the Discord. So if you want to join, feel free to come on. But yeah, so many of the troubles that we're all facing. I mean, whether you're talking about Britain or Ireland, or if you're talking about Canada or Australia or New Zealand, they're all the damn same. The troubles that we're facing are the same thing.
Yeah.
And and I say troubles because Okay, Tristan's saying he'll be on in 10 minutes, so okay, we'll look forward to that.
So yeah, Niall in the chat said it's the SDP leader, William Colston, interview with the New Culture Forum. David Starkey spoke there too. His new YouTube channel is great, and he asked me if I've been watching it. Yeah, I have actually been watching Starkey's new YouTube channel. It's
me
I was
too.
quite surprised how good it was.
Yeah, me too.
I was kind of expecting a lot of boomerisms, but it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. He's I think he's got a fairly nuanced position about the current royal family now, which I didn't think he had at one stage. Because I've got a pretty nuanced position about the British royal family now. It's like, well, my opinion is, like, I'm not going to slag the Queen off. I swore an oath of loyalty to her as an 18-year-old, so I'm not going to slag her off. And she's an old lady in her 90s. And like my grandma, when she was that age, was gaga, frankly, in many respects. So,
yeah. I think the Queen's most is still there, to her credit. It's the thing is though. I mean, another thing. This is a cope, right? This is an excuse, but there is an aspect to which you have to realise. Like yes, she's old. The family's kind of old generally. It's kind of a bit tired, and she's surrounded by political advisors who are pushing the same way as every other politician and any other think tank and political advisor out there. And she's surrounded by press who are telling her what the country wants, which is not in any way reliable with the reality.
So
and
true.
Any candidate for the throne has to push massively in the other direction on what to them just seems like a giant gamble and a whim to be pushing in the right direction. So the situation is kind of unavoidable with the royal family, and it's kind of one of those situations where, like, if you're a monarchist, then you kind of just have to be pro-monarchy, but we also have to kind of accept that to a large extent we're on our own.
Hang on, let's address this one because I don't know what's true. Just for Anglo-Nile first, Charles is late. I've got no room for Charles at all. I don't like him at all. I really have no room for him whatsoever. So I hear relatively good things about William, but who knows, really? Well, I don't know what you think about that one,
Alan. The funny thing is, I actually used to quite like his environmental stances, even though I didn't like anything else about him. He seemed quite a bit more grounded than most people in the environmental discussion. But the thing is, even if you step over him now, like who else is there? William's also shit. I mean,
yeah, that's what I was just asking. I mean, what's your opinion of William? I don't follow this stuff very closely, to be honest with you. I think the royal family is in huge potential trouble once Her Majesty dies. I really do. I think they're in huge potential trouble. And more importantly, in some respects, I think that they're going to be increasingly used against the real people of Britain, which seems to be happening even with the Queen now. I mean, someone in the chat said I said the Queen was a fruitcake. I don't think the Queen's a fruitcake at all. I think that 95-year-old ladies are not necessarily totally au fait with what's going on. I mean, I totally agree with what Adaman said. Like, she's getting stuff from her political advisors who are extremely biased, and she's probably watching some of the MSM. Something tells me she doesn't go around looking at dissident right websites on the internet.
But yeah, someone should post some Moldbug to her or something.
Yeah. Or this channel, better still.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the thing is there as well, like you know, she's surrounded by people that are trying to push her in the other direction, and there's literally no way of her knowing one way or the other what to do. I mean, I'm not so sure about now. I know a few years ago she was a lot more hesitant about this stuff. I mean, there's particularly one particular Queen's speech where she obviously had a speech written for her, like she always does, and it said like men and women in it or something like that, and she kind of read the extra egalitarian bit with like a quite a hint of disdain.
Yeah.
Now that seems to have gone. She seems to have kind of embraced what it is she thinks the country wants.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was trying to get across. Is that I don't think she's gaga, but I think like it's not that difficult to bully 95-year-old little old ladies. That's my real opinion on Her Majesty. And like I said, I swore an oath of allegiance to her as an 18-year-old soldier, and I still take that quite seriously.
Yeah.
I'm not going to slag her off. I mean, like I was on Apostolic Majesty's channel when he did that Queen of the Ashes stream, and I had people slagging me off because I was defending her. So, you know, in the chat. So, but yeah, I don't know if you know anything about this, Adamant. For Britain, Democratic Nationalist says the SDP are not calling for a halt to immigration, just a reduction to 100,000. I don't know if that's true.
Then. I know that the Heritage Party have called for net zero immigration, I think, but I'm not sure if that was an actual policy or just something they sort of jokingly threw around.
Anglo Nile is saying, can someone explain to me what she has actually said? She certainly came out with a load of crap about the green agenda, did she not? Which again was written for her.
So it's kind of a story of two parts, because there was first off there was the idea that there was like a hot mic thing.
So to set it up, which already makes it look suspicious, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did kind of hold out. I suppose I've got to eat the L on this one, because I was one of the people that kind of said she probably didn't say that. It wasn't exactly broadcasted out. They just claimed it, and it's not. It's probably not. It's probably just the media trying to sort of sow dissent and cause trouble and push people in a particular direction. But then she did kind of actually come out more recently and say that it was a statement by the who was it by? Was it by her or was it by Prince Charles? But it was said that that we need to rise above politics and sort of sort this global issue out.
Yeah. But I mean, as you rightly say, I mean, that crap is written for her. She doesn't do that herself. And she wouldn't have done that. She wouldn't have done that herself when she was 50, never known now she's 95. Like almost everything she says publicly is written for her by the government. Yeah.
So I'm just checking it again. Yeah, she said it herself.
So yeah, I don't know about that one. Lady of Shalott says, yes, but she isn't just a little old lady. She's a monarch. Yeah, she is, but she's still a little old lady, if you see what I mean. Yes, she's more than a little old lady. Of course she is. She's an embodiment of a lot of stuff, of history and tradition and all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, she herself is a little old lady. And 95-year-old little old ladies can get bullied. And we have governments that are perfectly capable of doing that. So, you know, to put things in the best possible light for her, which I tend to do, that's what I would say. Did she make mistakes when she was younger? Yes, I absolutely think she did. She let prerogatives go, like royal prerogatives she could have used. She let them go when she was younger. And I criticize her for that as much as anyone else does. But at the end of the day now, she's a 95-year-old little old lady. For God's sake, what do you expect from her?
Yeah, so Gary Garner Stack of Ribs said, a bit controversial, but it's Andrew's ties to Epstein that concern me more than his alleged assault of a 17-year-old. Well, despite what they keep trying, there isn't much evidence for that whole assault thing. But it's undeniable that he has close ties to Epstein. So
yes,
that is definitely the more worrying one.
Yeah, I agree with that. The second point of that, but I mean, also that supposed 17-year-old has had a lot of criticism thrown at her from a lot of different people. Which may or may not be true. I don't know. And I'm no fucking Epstein fan whatsoever. And I think it's deeply suspicious that Epstein was killed in an American jail and the mainstream media just buried the story totally. So,
Yeah.
For God's sake. Tristan, how you going, mate?
All right. Is my mic all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds okay.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on.
You're more than welcome, mate.
So what was it like getting grilled by the press?
I was kind of pleased with what they sort of said. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah. I read a couple of articles that were written about it. I mean, they couldn't really have a go at you much because, like, you're pretty much a minority of what you're pushing there. So,
Mm.
So what you've been talking about?
What have we been talking about? Oh, everything really. We've been talking about the. Have you got a fan or something on your computer there, Tristan?
Oh, sorry, that's my computer fan. I'll just mute my mic.
That's okay, man. Don't worry. It's just like I've got a cooling pad under mine that I turn off when I'm streaming because it just makes so much bloody noise. But yeah, we've been talking about pretty much everything. What we talked about, Armin? We've talked about the government trying to get rid of people's savings. We talked about the government trying to chuck old people out of their homes. We've talked about the issue around the Queen and all this green nonsense. I suppose one of the things we should finish up on is this nonsense in Glasgow. I mean, what's your view on that stuff, Alan?
Oh, well, actually, can we, because there was a question John McNamara brought up earlier, and I was trying to find his way to segue around to it. He said, what's the panel's opinion on the right way to talk about race and its place in one's identity as a whole? I think AA and others are really starting to get a bit reckless on this.
All right, let me see if I can find it, and I'll put
it was quite a way back. You probably won't be able to.
Oh, okay, but go for it. Yeah.
Well, I do think AA has been a bit reckless on this lately. I mean, particularly there was a bit of a Twitter spurg like a day or two ago that was a bit much.
Yes, I think I heard about that.
Certain activities in the 1940s and cleansing fires, and
it
probably a safe bet to say that's a little too much. I mean, to be honest, I try to step over that stuff entirely. At most, I might talk about like in-group preference, and they will try to say that's race. You're talking about race. At which point you can kind of just say, well, yeah, and because in-group preferences or racism, they'll say, because in-group preference is obviously low for whites, which is not the angle they try to push anyway. It is important though. I mean, regardless of what people say, I mean, you'll see this a lot in like workplaces, especially workplaces that can get a bit diverse. Let's say we can say with like Eastern European workers. There'll be this divide between sort of the English or the British and everyone else. But then when a new group is introduced, let's say, I've actually seen this, like a team of, let's say, black workers from a certain area of London, the place will sort of reform, and suddenly you'll get bloody like Poles and Romanians on side with the British against the new sort of our group. So it clearly does play a large part on people's identity, as does just ethnicity. I'm not sure of what an actual solid strategy would be for this going forward, though.
Man, I don't know what to say about this. I mean, look, the thing AA was going on about was like this great event in the Second World War, which everyone goes on about all the time, and he was suggesting there maybe should be one, or a second one, or something like that. But it was absolutely a crazy thing to say, in my opinion, like an insane thing to say. What are you going to go? What are you going to gain from that at all?
Especially since like he keeps saying he's trying to get Mencius Moldbug on for Carlisle Day.
Yeah, I think he may not succeed in that by
Yeah,
coming
because
out.
I mean, he might not even
also,
see it, but I know he's. I'm not even sure if he's even on Twitter now, but I know he's very much against that sort of stuff, for good reason. It's just dumb. It's a dumb thing to have to do, especially since he's trying to do like speaking events now, which supposedly went very well, and I'm very glad that they have, and I hope they continue. And I don't know, it just kind of seems like a needlessly silly thing that could put that stuff at jeopardy. I mean, he said himself a while ago that he wouldn't have Ralph on, right reaction Ralph, which I totally respect because you shouldn't.
Yep.
But he said he wouldn't have him on because that guy was out in public doing the Roman salute, and that was just a stupid thing to do. And now he's almost seemingly come like full circle. I don't know.
I don't know what to say about it. Look, I think AA makes entertaining streams. I think he sometimes makes informative videos. But I just think sometimes his common sense seems to fly out the window. I just don't get it. Like most of the people he calls Tory boys are not supporters of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing I said before. Like he boils it down to, when you boil down his Tory boy thing to things that actually are consistent and stick. The two things he says that still stick is that they're nihilistic and they counter signal their own movement. But the thing is, they're in the same video that he said this, he brought up how much he likes Peter Hitchens. Now I like Peter Hitchens too, but if there is one pundit in the UK who is on the right, who is nihilistic and counter signals their own movement, like what name are you going to pick? It's going to be Peter Hitchens. And on top of that, he then literally the next video did a sort of a critique read through of one of the Wellington Project articles, which I actually quite like the article that they mentioned. And he was originally going to go into that much more harshly than he did, but I went into his Telegram chat and called him a Tory boy. And after a bit of back and forward, he seemed to be a bit more fair about it, a touch more balanced. So,
but he's very selective who he blocks, because there are people who are what he would call Tory boys, who are absolutely still in his group. I mean, they don't make a fuss about being Tory boys, but and they're not Tory boys because none of the people AA calls Tory boys really are, so far as I can work out. I mean, as you said, Alan, I did a stream with John yesterday, and the whole stream was basically anti-Conservative Party, as far as I could work out. And I don't think anyone on the stream had a good word to say for the Conservative Party from start to finish.
No.
So how do you call them Tory boys, I mean, Royal Oak, who's in my Discord and has been on this stream many times, is one of the people that AA has actually named. And I can tell you for a fact Royal Oak ain't a Tory boy.
We say that about him, but it's a joke.
Yeah, we call him a semi-Tory boy, but it is a joke because he's not. No sensible person on the right these days supports the Conservative Party as it is today. I mean, yeah, one or two MPs, maybe, but not the party.
Yeah.
It's insane. It really is. And, and I'm not at all in favor of punching right. And I've said that many times. But on the other hand, as much as look, the one thing I think AA was right about was that the chap who did that meme that he got so upset about shouldn't have put it to those two bugmen in America. He shouldn't have sent it to them as well. That was the one mistake I think AA had a point about. But everything else he blew up completely out of proportion, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay, let's just cut myself here. I don't think Adam and Sitch are that bad.
Oh, I hate them. I really hate them.
Okay, hang on though, right? I get it. Right, I watched the debate they did with Dave and sort of how badly they took it, but Adam especially will actually look into this stuff. He's not maybe the brightest guy out there, but I think he's now come out and actually said he went and read the Machiavellians that AA have recommended. He's reading some other stuff. He will go through the text, and he's never going to be like our guy because he's got this sort of strong sort of liberal sensibility that will always mean he pulls back to the center. He'll withdraw quite sharply, and he did that, of course, with that Dave debate. But there's far worse people out there, significantly worse people out there within the sort of YouTube sort of pseudo political landscape for
sure.
AA to get tussled up with, even within the dissident right.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But my point is, like, I just regard those two as total bugmen soy boys. And I don't think that, what's his name, Harrion, should have, like, included them in that tweet. I think that was a mistake. But AA then blew it all out of all proportion, frankly, in my opinion.
Yeah, he did. He sounded like he was crying on that stream, or like he'd been crying.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's strange because, like, you know, he won't do that at Sargon, and I mean, Sargon's not exactly Mr. Right Wing.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like Sargon really pissed me off a few times. I still listen to him, but he's pissed me off a few times because he will talk about like the dissident right, and he will immediately try to tar it with this sort of PA brush. And I kind of had to sit back and go, hang on a minute, who the fuck a PA? I haven't even heard of these people or seen any hide nor hair of them in months. Like they're a nobody in the broader sort of right wing. No one's an anybody in the broader right wing anyway. But so he's just doing that because he's also trying to sort of pull back to these sort of centrist positions.
I think AA he doesn't show good judgment about who he thinks is good and who he doesn't think is good. I mean, like, I wouldn't have had kind of Greg Johnson on my show at all.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have him on. I'm sorry. I mean, actually, that's not true. I would, but only if he was going to debate something. But to have him on and not like ask him serious questions, I wouldn't have done that. And as somebody was telling me, there was somebody who was streaming with Mark Collette like today or yesterday, who's pretty well known, and I can't remember who that was now.
It wasn't Piers Corbyn, was it?
No, I think they have streamed with him, but that was last week. This is much more recent.
Oh, right, okay.
It was either, I can't remember. It might have been right at the beginning of this stream that somebody talked about it. That someone was streaming with Mark Collette, and I was thinking to myself, what the fuck are they streaming with Mark Collette for? But you know, Mark Collette, to me, to be perfectly like upfront and obvious about it, is a glow in the dark. He is around still because he leads good British nationalists into a cul-de-sac, and I totally think that's why he's allowed to be around.
Yeah.
But AA often shows to me pretty poor judgment about who he'll stream with, and a little bit of hypocrisy, or more than a little bit of hypocrisy sometimes about who he'll stream with. So, you know, I know, like I said, I like AA. I think he makes entertaining streams, which I guess he has to because that's his living. And he sometimes makes informative videos. But I don't agree with everything he says by any means. And I'm someone who's been giving him money for about 14 months. So, you know.
Yeah.
Not much money, by the way. Not much
I did
money.
Membership his channel because I got a couple of sort of more normie friends into watching his stuff a long time ago. And even they were complaining, saying, oh, I prefer the stuff he was doing like 6 months ago. So I signed up a membership and downloaded a bunch of his old cigar streams.
The thing that I don't get is that there was a time when AA was way to the left of me, way to the left of me. In fact, so much so that I stopped watching him for a long time. And these days, he's supposedly this. I don't know what you describe him as, even, but you know, he's you know, right on the dissident right and almost like the old alt-right type kind of thing. And yet he voted Remain in the Brexit referendum, and as said he did. He voted for Tony Blair, for fuck's sake,
and for the Lib Dems.
Yeah, and he told people to vote for Alexander Johnson at the last election. I don't know, man. I wouldn't have done any of those things. So you know, it's a bit strange to me how he's that far right wing now, supposedly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I mean, he's actually, is he actually moving right, or is he just getting spurky on some positions and then moving left on some economic ones?
Well, I mean, he still sometimes claims he's a classical liberal, I believe, but I mean, you know,
I think he now calls himself, what is it, a postmodern traditionalist, which I did actually quite like as a title.
Yeah. I mean, I call myself a reactionary traditionalist, which is probably about as far as I can go. But yeah, I don't know. I just think, well, you can't really be a nationalist, Max Ernst, can he? I mean, he's half Iranian, I believe. So I mean, you know, a bit difficult to be a nationalist. Whose nationalism is he going to support? But I mean, you know, and I'm not slagging him off for that at all. I don't care. I'm not by any means a ethno-nationalist, really. I do think that Britain should be for the Anglo-Celtic people who are the original people of Britain. I do think that. But I'm not against having some people in Britain who are not of that ethnicity. So yeah, I don't know. It's a funny one. As I say, I don't always agree with him at all. But you know, Tristan, was there anything you wanted to bring up particularly?
No, not really. I just thought I'd pop in and just see how everything's going. Really.
Yeah, and how's your campaign going?
Oh, it's going fantastic. We have planned that me and a lot of IUP members in the coming month towards Christmas, we will be handing out leaflets and flyers in Dublin. So if anyone wants to come to Dublin Square and just grab one or two and just spread the word, that'd be great.
That sounds cool. Do you think you'll get a good reception, or do you think there'll be a few cold people there?
I think there will be a few people that will just, you know, rip up the leaflet as always and just throw it in our face and tell us that we're scum. But I'm really hoping that the common decent people will be willing to sit there for like 5 minutes and just have a short weekly discussion. And I'm expecting that's going to be the vast majority of people. We might video some of it.
Well, I know we've got people like Sojo, for example, who want to do real life stuff. And the one thing you can't say about Tristan is he's doing real life stuff for sure. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I just want to get to the point where I have fuck you money, and then I can dox myself. It's not too far away now.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Listen, I've said this before. The one and only reason that I retain anonymity is because of my son. My son's an officer in the Royal Navy, and I'm not lying. He's the spit of me. And if I was to, and I've said some things about the Royal Navy, always complimentary to the Navy, but not always complimentary to its modern policies on like women and so on. But if he was recognised because of me, his career would come to a full stop. It's that bad. And that's the one reason I retain anonymity. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't give a shit, frankly, because, like, you know, I'm semi-retired. I don't care. I'm 56 years old. But there are reasons for some people to retain anonymity, and as you rightly say, Alaman, you do have to have sufficient financial resources that, like, you can't be cancelled. or if you are cancelled, you're not on the breadline, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need much. I think I said to you the other day, like I'm working for this new company, and I mean, if that works, I'm probably golden. It's not looking too great at the minute, though.
Well, I hope it works out for you, man. I mean, look, you're a young fella; it will sort itself over time. But I entirely agree with what Sojo says about people doing stuff in real life and hating the anonymity and all the rest of it. But you do have to have that fuck you money in order to do that, or be in the position in life where it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, if you can get your group of people that are self-doxed, they can. I mean, first off, they're significantly more effective than what we could ever be. And they can probably get the movement over a line where the anonymity for everyone isn't anywhere near as necessary anymore.
Well, I mean, it also depends what you say. If you don't come out with silly shit like AA came out with the other day, then it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get why he hasn't just self-doxed anyway, because I'm not going to, but
it's easy
if someone
to
was
find
if someone was motivated enough, it's quite easy to find. There was a certain critic of his who isn't a particularly nice guy, but he did point out, and it was at least partially true, that AA did also kind of almost self-dox himself over a certain book release a while ago, which I won't mention.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to get into it, but I mean, like, I know what AA looks like, and I don't know him, but I know what he looks like, and it wasn't very hard to find. But you know, but
there was because we were just talking briefly about PA. There was a young lad in their sphere a while ago who used to do a little YouTube show not that long ago called True UK, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of and he brought up this good point where he said, well, the problem is with the whole anonymity thing is you can't you'll say things, you won't be as self-censored as you probably should be. You'll say things that will get you into trouble when you do eventually get doxxed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Tristan has just asked me in the private chat if he can make a comment because he's got to go. Tristan, go for it, man.
All right, sorry that I can't stay for much longer.
That's all right, man. No worries.
Had a few mates over, but I just wanted to say to John McNamara, he said he'd be willing to debate on you whenever I'm next time down in Munster. I would say let's save it till I'm down maybe in Munster, and instead of a debate, let's make it a conversation and maybe grab a few pints while we're at it. I'd be totally up for that. If you could just DM me on Twitter and we could sort out a time and date.
Cool. That would be interesting.
Anyways, thank you, Duke, for having me on. Sorry that I couldn't stay for much longer.
No worries, mate. Like everyone in the Discord, you are always welcome to come on the stream. People come on because they ask to come on. I mean, I don't stop anyone coming on. It's just a case of people saying to me, I'd like to come on, and, that's it. Right. But good on you, man, and I'm happy to have you back in the Discord again, so go well.
All right. It's good to be back. Cheers. All right. See you later, lads. Bye.
See ya.
So, yeah, I don't know, man. Oh, yeah, I've just remembered, Adam, that it was Morgoth who was on with... it was Morgoth who apparently was on with Mark Collette.
Oh, right.
Which I was a bit disappointed about because I thought that Morgoth had been moving away from that.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought he had as well, actually. I hadn't noticed him in that sphere. But
I'd been watching him for a while, and like as far as I could see, like for the past few months, he'd been moving away from that PA thing, and now he's shot right back into it, apparently. But I don't know if it's true. It was just what somebody said. So I don't know. It may not be true for all I know. But I'll be disappointed if he has. And like I said, it's like I don't agree with Mark Collette's stated views at all. But it's not so much that. It's because I think he's a honeypot thing. PA is Patriotic Alternative, John Boy, which is a Nazi LARPA party in the UK that claims to be a British right-wing nationalist party, but really is more interested in mid-20th century Germans.
Which sadly, like most parties that get into that sort of position, contains within it lots of good people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Desperately want to do something, but don't really know where else to go.
Yes, I beg your pardon, Adam, and you're quite right for pulling me on that one. I normally do say, look, most of the ordinary supporters of Patriotic Alternative are good people, and just like Adam says, they don't know where to go because there aren't many places to go in the UK at the moment if you want to stop the madness that we're in at the moment. So. To be fair, they aren't all Nazi LARPers, but this is Biarki in the chat. They're not all Nazi LARPers just because of Mark's optics. Yeah, I totally agree. That's what Armin was just pointing out. And yeah, most of the ordinary supporters of PA in UK are good people. But Mark Collette himself, I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him with the little finger of my left hand.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people saying coming into the defence of Laura Towler. I didn't like the way Laura Towler threw Niall under the bus quite a while ago, when he asked if he could have her on a stream to talk about some stuff. But other than that, I usually think she's pretty good. I think I did a video which I don't think's aged all that well. I did a video ages ago about like the problem of Mark Collette and PA, and it was and my argument in there, although I went very, 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 very lightly on them, it was essentially he should step aside and just let Laura run things.
Well, there's that, but then you've got to look at Laura's husband.
Yes.
Who was, what was he, National Action or something like that?
Yeah, I think you can get away with that, although it is hard. But it's definitely a step up from where they are now.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, look, even if you leave aside all of Mark Collette's politics, if you can dignify them with the word politics, leave aside him being tricked repeatedly by TV people, leave aside him going out with that woman who was about a foot taller than him with a great big Nazi tattoo on her tit. Leave aside all that. And then look, when he was in British National Party, I think, when he was done for having two 14-year-old girls in his hotel room. And like the people will say allegedly and all this kind of stuff, but there's a hell of a lot of evidence that he and another chap were done with two 14-year-old girls in their hotel room, and there are even audio recordings of it. So, yeah, I wouldn't trust Mark Collette as far as I could throw him. And some of the people running PA at the moment are people who were his absolute supposed enemies when he was in the British National Party. And there's also been like all this pedophile stuff going on around some of the people who are involved with PA as well, in the leadership of PA, not the ordinary people, the leadership. So yeah, that's just my view. I wouldn't trust him. I think he's probably a British government asset of one sort or another, and he is deliberately leading people down a cul-de-sac who could otherwise be doing good stuff.
Yeah.
Like as genuine British nationalists, rather than people who are looking at something that happened in the mid 20th century in fucking Germany. Cardamon in Morgoth has never stopped being a closet Hitler worshipper. I'm not sure about that, mate, to be honest. I don't think I ever thought he was a Hitler worshipper. But, you know, maybe. I like, you know, he makes some good videos. But I don't always agree with him by any means. But I did think he'd moved away from that kind of position. There was another one I saw up here somewhere. I like Door of Albion. Max Ernst, who, like, I know Max Ernst fairly well from chats. Door of Albion I like. I think she makes great videos. And I like History Bro. I think he does good stuff. And I mean, History Bro works with bloody Sargon now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
So yeah, I've got no problem with Daughter of Albion or History Bro at all. And I liked Laura Towers' "We Were Never Asked" thing. I thought that was good.
Yeah, they should have just literally just done that every year. That should have been the entirety of their campaign.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I'm not quite sure of a taste in husbands, but you know, maybe he's a great bloke. I've got no idea. So,
yeah.
but
So Godstone said, "I like Horus, and it's a shame he can't see the problem with it all." Does Horus still make videos? I've gone back not that long ago actually and rewatched some of his old ones. They're good. I'm not sure if he makes
I've
anything
seen
new.
him around. He's been in the chat on a stream or two that I've done, or in the comments anyway. I quite like Horus, but I don't see how he doesn't see the support of mid 20th century German people and Austrians is not really going to help you.
I don't know the
21st century
exactities of his position, but he debated Brutus a few times, and
Yeah.
I know the argument that he seemed to present there seemed to come down to the idea that we should somehow red pill the British people as a whole on like the World War II situation before we can get over it. And I thought, well, first off, I didn't entirely agree with his World War II argument anyway. I thought there was a few flaws in it. And secondly, like anyone on the right should understand hierarchy and elite theory and should know that that's just not a working strategy. Any strategy that comes down to red pilling the populace is not a working strategy.
It's going to be very, very difficult, I think. I think it's happening more and more, but I don't think that's because of us. I think that's just because of this dystopian nature of what's going on in the world now.
But it's always a reaction. Like there will come a time where, like, I mean, I often say that if anyone I'm talking to in real life disagrees with me on something, I'll just go, well, you'll be here in 10 years' time. And inevitably they usually are. But it's always behind the curve. It's always behind the influx of power into the establishment. You know, so by the time everyone is essentially red pilled, it's too late. So
yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I agree with Gary Garner's stack of ribs. It's so sad that nationalist fears are so polarized. It is, but you know, people will say it's like herding cats, and it's not really even that. It's that people can't keep their egos in check. I think mostly. I mean, look, I'm never going to agree with Mark Blair ever, no matter what, because I think he's I think he's a wanker, and B, I think he's a con artist. But most people on the right, I can agree with to a more or less degree, and I won't get in an argument with them. But then you have somebody like AA, and he lets his ego get in the way of the shit. You know, and then ends up like saying, oh no, half the people on the right are crap and they're Tory boys, when they're not. You know, if they were actually Tory boys who absolutely were supporting the modern Conservative Party, I would agree with him totally, but they're not. And they're nothing like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the dissident right is it's just full of dissidents.
Yeah.
And you've got that, you know, in the sort of Yuri Bezmenov school of thought on this, you've got that point where you've got to turn around and shoot your own dissident movement. And the truth is, there ain't enough bullets to put down all of us. It's just, there's just so many people who've all got their own way and their own take on everything, and they won't bend on anything.
Yeah. And if AA had absolutely a firm set of principles, I might even respect him, but I'm not sure he does. You know, like his views change. And always, when you get into the position where you're earning your living from YouTube, I think you're in a difficult position at that stage. Like I know Dave the Distributist, for example, who's a guy I really like, even though I'm not a trad Catholic and he is, he just doesn't take super chats anymore. And I kind of see why. Yeah, I kind of like it too, because it's kind of like, you know, he's not going to go down that route of earning his money off of YouTube. And the bloke's an engineer, which is a good bloke's job. So, you know, but yeah, I don't know. I think like it sometimes it's people's egos are getting in the way as much as anything else.
Yeah. So are we going to call it there, or was there another topic you wanted to cover?
No, unless you had anything else to bring up, I think we've probably done enough for this evening.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We will. Adam, do you have a YouTube channel, by the way?
I do, but I haven't uploaded anything in a long time.
Right. Well, if you put your YouTube channel in the private chat, I'll stick that up, and then eventually I'll stick it under the description of the video. Probably after I've had a sleep, because I've not been asleep for ages.
Yeah. All right, I'll put that in a sec.
Yeah, and I'll wait for you to do that. So yeah, guys, don't forget to like the stream and subscribe. I always find it funny because like these streams get like normally about 30 to 40 likes, and then when you look at it 24 hours later, YouTube has usually reduced it to 3, and then it goes back up again. So I never know what's going on with YouTube. It's quite strange. The channel has been growing, guys, so please do subscribe to the channel. It does help us get to more people. And whilst I agree with Adam that, like, you know, we're never gonna red pill all the normies, we need to get more people on our side, even though we need to be careful about who they are. So that's my view on that one. But yeah, they're hiding it for the algorithm. Dave Bergeron says, yeah, I'm sure that's true. I mean, you know, YouTube in no way, shape or form believes in free speech. It just doesn't. How are you going, Adam, by the way, with Splendid Isolation, the book?
Well, because I was ill.
Yeah, I know that.
I still had a bad cough for about a month afterwards, but I have started reading it again. It's a generally quite good book. It's not a difficult book to read, so.
No, it's well written. I agree with that.
I know there were some other people that were going to read it, and I thought maybe you wanted to get maybe a good sort of 3 or 4 people on.
Yeah, well, we've got who's reading it? Ozzy's reading it, I believe, and what's his name? Hang on, I'm going to have to go and look at his name. Just can't remember it. Rupert August is also reading it. So, yeah, if the 4 of us do it, that'll be great. And I mean, if someone else wants to come on, they can too, of course. But yeah, I would like to do that because this channel is kind of named after that book. Although what I would also say is that this channel started off as a 37 channel. So, you know, which was a reaction to the 14 words thing, really. Which is why I used to do stuff with Brutus when Brutus was around, and would do stuff with Brutus again if he comes back at some stage. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to play us out with a tune, and I only found this last week, and I just had to play it. And when you hear it, you'll know why I had to play it. So there we go.
You playing it yet?
Highs started out with the odds all against us.
Now it's working.
You've heard about the battle that was fought in New Orleans when the British had some trouble with their ranks. Now I'd like to tell you all about the war at Queenston Heights where the British chased 4,000 frightened Yanks. What a great victory for the British! One of history's most heroic fights. What a sight so fine when that long red line drove the Yankees off of Queenston Heights. Started out with the odds all against them, but the British had a fighting man named Brock. He was fearless, he was brave, and old Queenston he did save from the Yankees who were petrified with shock. What a great victory for the British. One of history's most heroic fights. fight. What a sight so fine when that long red line drove the Yankees off of Queenston Heights. On the other side, the Yankees had a meeting. All those Injuns with the British made them sad. Said their leader, "Man, I'm willing to take part in all the killing, but I just don't dig those Injuns when they're mad." What a great victory for the British. One of history's most heroic fights. What a sight so fine when that long red line drove the Yankees off of Queenston Heights. Well, the British kept fighting even stronger. Every soldier aimed his musket carefully. And those Yankees watched the clock for the moment when old Brock stopped the shooting for some crumpets and some tea. What a great victory for the British. One of history's most heroic fights. What a sight so fine when that long red line drove the Yankees off of Queenston Heights. Then the British charged a yelling and a screaming, and those Yankees ran like bunnies in retreat. Cried their leader, "Man, I'm hip. You don't have to crack that whip. You can have the hill, 'cause chum, I'm feeling beat." What a great victory for the British. One of history's most heroic fights. What a sight so fine when that long red line drove the Yankees off of Queenston Heights.
And that was a rollicking tune from Anglo-Welsh Productions, which is a channel I would suggest you guys go and check out. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to Adaman and Ozzy and Tristan for joining the stream. And we'll see you next week for Splendid Isolation number 48. Go all, people, and don't let the bastards grind you down.